Welcome to another installation of Transitions in Leadership. I am Professor Omiyẹmi Artisia Green, and I am currently positioned at William & Mary. And today I'm here with Jeremy Gillett at the University of Kentucky. And we are continuing our conversation between ATHE members on navigating the profession, preparing for tenure and promotion, and all things in between. And so I am here to share the knowledge that I have with Jeremy. Jeremy's facilitating the questions. And so I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Jeremy.
Well, Omiyẹmi, thank you very much. So I want to get straight to the in-between. And that in-between for us is finances within the
Yes.
academic structure. And
Mhm.
so, I really want to understand what strategies you used or you found effective for negotiating salary increases during your tenure and promotion process.
For sure. So first would simply be to receive the offer and then determine what your ask or counter offer is going to be. Which is one strategy that I employed. Another strategy that I employed, because I'm at I'm at an institution where our salaries are public information. We're able to do a bit of research and comparative analysis between peers who are doing similar work.
Mhm.
And so I had a conversation with my dean at the time, this was a couple of years prior, about an equity adjustment. And she granted that equity adjustment. And so
Omiyẹmi, what's an equity adjustment for those that don't know?
it's literally where they investigate similar peers doing similar work in similar related fields to see where we might need to balance the scale, so
Okay.
to speak, right? To make sure that pay is equitable.
Okay.
And so during our annual merit review for that particular year, I received an equity adjustment as part of the salary increase. Other things I have done throughout my time in the professoriate to increase my salary would be to apply for it, having positioned myself to receive, then apply for some of our competitive university awards and endowed professorships. Those are ways to increase your salary. Taking on administrative duties are a way to increase your salary. The catch with the endowed chairs or awards or even the administrative duties is that they tend to be term. And so it's for a fixed period. It may not be added to the base of your salary. So that's something to keep in mind too, that while you get the distinction of having gained the endowed professorship, it might not be part of your base salary. There are some endowed chairs that do become part of your base. And so when you're looking at, the list of awards, they tend to come out, mid-fall. Consider the ones, if you are eligible, to apply for them to see if they could be added to your base.
Mm-hmm.
And then every institution is different as it relates to administrative work. Sometimes that is added to your base. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you will get the increase for the work. And then when you return back to the faculty, only a portion of it might be added to your base salary, right? And so because each institution is different, you'll have to give that some consideration when you're applying for the endowed awards, when you're considering administrative work, and when you're engaging in research for an equity adjustment, right? That you're going to want to pull from data that is similar to yours, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, sure. And where do you find this data?
So if it's a public institution, the salaries are going to be public, right? They're generally published by, the local newspaper. Ours, because I'm in Williamsburg, Virginia, we can go to the Richmond Times-Dispatch, which is one of our major periodicals, and they publish the salaries from the year prior.
Okay. So in finding this information, you realize things are unequitable in your,
Mhm.
in your favor. How do I advocate for a competitive salary while staying aligned with the institutional norms?
That's really the conversation that you might start with your chair, because there's a process for communication, um, or or depending on your relationship with your dean, right? That's a conversation that you would have with your dean. Make sure your data is accurate for sure, and as current as possible when you're pulling for salary information and it's coming from, in my case, our major newspapers. Know that it's always off by, a couple of thousand, because it's generally the year prior. Um, and so it's really about making the case for your value and the investment that you're making in the institution compared to, peers who are also doing similar work, who may be positioned similarly in the field. Do know that some fields historically are paid a little lower than other fields, right? And so that's also part of what you might hear in the conversation.
Now, when you're talking about fields, are you talking about the drastic difference in the School of Medicine and the School of Arts, or are you talking a little more closely the School of Music and the School of Theater?
A little more closely, like maybe theater and modern languages and literatures, or theater and English, right? So when you're trying to do a comparative analysis, we're obviously not going to go have this conversation using data between a theater scholar and an economist,
Right, right.
right?
Mhm.
So for us, it would be arts and humanities.
Got it.
Mhm.
Okay, that's good. So, were there specific milestones like awards, publication, leadership roles that strengthen your case for a raise?
For the equity adjustment, the model that I used, was a peer who was doing similar work, right? In a similar time frame. We were hired around the same time, give or take 365 days. I mean, truly, when you lined up the CV, though they were in a different field that was closely related, the work was really similar. So it was really hard to simply just rest on the notion that, well, you're in theater and historically, theater historians are paid X comparative to, this particular colleague in a closely related field. You really and truly had to start looking at, we're doing like the same kind of work in the same place around the same time. We're showing up in the same spaces,
Right,
serving
right.
on the same committees. I mean, this is, like I said, when you start going down the line,
Hmm.
it's hard
So,
to deny.
so would you say those those that line by line, those
Mhm.
committees you all were on, were they national committees? Were they regional committees? Local? How does that weigh in the merit conversation? What should an assistant professor target in year 3 of tenure or year 4 of tenure, when we want to go up for that conversation?
So at the assistant professor level, a lot of the work that you're going to do is within the institution. You are establishing yourself. So you're strengthening your teaching. You are getting your research funded, established. You are presenting at national conferences. You are showcasing your work to the world and building relationships such that when it's time for the external review, folks can say, we know your work, right? And we can talk about how we are contextualizing this in relationship to the rest of your peers who are doing similar things, and what the standards are for your field, right? Um, at William and Mary, our salary adjustments are largely based in merit, right? So we have an annual review each year. There is a different rubric for each program and department about the kinds of activities they are expecting to see in your file. And so first and foremost, if such a document exists at your institution, then you want to be aware of these are the activities that they think about when they think about teaching. Right? A production that you do on campus, whether as an actor or a director working with students, is that teaching or is that research? That's going to weigh different. So you have to understand where the activities you might engage in are going to land at your institution, and then you're going to want to, keep that in mind as you are determining what activities you're going to engage in for the year.
Right.
And I think that's important, because then you can find yourself engaging in activities just for the sake of collecting, a salary increase, as opposed to doing work that is truly meaningful to you, doing work in balance so that you can spend time with your family, so that you can actually think about the research that you want to produce, and that it feels useful and beneficial. And so that's a delicate dance that you're going to have to engage in when you're trying to determine what activities you're going to do. But do I think you should be establishing a national profile? Absolutely. Right? And that profile is going to grow with each level you attain in the professoriate. And so by the time you are, ready for full, you should have internationalization as part of your identity. Right? Are you presenting at conferences across the water? Have you taken students on a study abroad during the summer or during a winter break or a fall break? How are you building? It's all about relationships at every level, truly. And how are you building those relationships throughout your career? How are you bringing the institution and the community together in ways that produce new knowledge for the public, especially if you're a state institution? It's really about, the development of knowledge that's going to serve the public. Locally, at the state level, national, international.
So in this, when you're reviewing someone's dossier going up for associate professor, going up for associate professor, give me a soft example of someone in their research work who hasn't met the baseline and someone who has exceeded the baseline in their research within this regional, local, and national conversation.
Okay, I'm going to use myself as an example.
Let's do it.
As an assistant professor, I also had the privilege and the honor to assume leadership of a national organization right around the same time I started at William and Mary, right? Black Theater Network was a place where I grew up. I may have said something similar in part one of our conversation, but it's a place where I grew up intellectually, for sure. And the membership and leadership had enough confidence in my ability to become president-elect. So I did that for a year, then I assumed the presidency for a year, and then went on through the rest of the positions on the executive board, immediate past president. I'd served as secretary. I had chaired the S. Randolph Edmonds scholarship competition. And so I had developed enough presence and confidence amongst the membership to assume that position. That helped. I was presenting, right, my research at the Black Theater Network. That helped. Some of the members of the Black Theater Network were also members of ATHE, right? They were also involved in the NEH Summer Institute that I also was a part of as an assistant professor. And so I began to develop a research interest and a profile that people became aware of, right? Largely through the work I did at the Black Theater Network and the NEH Summer Institute and the relationships that I built through those two particular institutions. I attended the 2014 NEH Summer Institute on Black Aesthetics at Emory University. And as I said earlier, there were a number of scholars there also involved in the work of Black Theater Network, also the August Wilson Society, right? So I was kind of running in those three areas where people became aware of me, my work, and I was doing work that I was passionate about. So it didn't feel difficult. I was talking about things that were of interest to me. And
Mm-hmm.
so by the time I had come up for associate professorship, um, I had my first publication. It was a book chapter, and I had one like literally in press, right? Where the conversation began with the expectations, for you, Omiyẹmi, are, 2 shows here at William and Mary and get your 4 letters, right? That's what we want to see by the time you come up. Well, I had done 3 shows, 2 on campus, one back at ATHE Creative Arts Foundation in Chicago. They wanted 4 letters. I had 5 letters. They weren't expecting publications. I had publications, right? So that showed the promise for more work, right? So what you want to see is that you've established a research agenda, you have followed through on that agenda, and the work is going to continue, right?
Yes.
So at the associate level, I started presenting at international conferences because I was talking about, West African philosophy and aesthetics and using a kind of a language that my peers at, William and Mary in the Department of Theater, Speech and Dance at that time, now Theater and Performance, weren't using. I was presenting at other conferences beyond BTN, August Wilson Society, right? And so these were peers who understood the language I was using, even though I was still operating in my lane, right? As a theater historian and as a director and dramaturg, the conversation was really different. So other people were learning of me and my work. So that by the time I came up for full, I had published, more book chapters, book reviews, couple of essays. I mean, things were just really different. So I was building on what I had already established, right? And continuing the conversation I established as an assistant professor. And I'm just continuing that conversation because at every level, they want to see that the promise for more
Evolves.
is there and it
Right.
continues to grow, that you're not going to rest on what you've accomplished at the previous level, that you're just going to keep going. Your relation, what's also an important part of that is the relationships that you're building with the community locally. One of my teaching projects I engaged in with a colleague, Dr. Amy Cork, through a Riva Lee Faculty Fellowship, which was funded by the Mellon Foundation. We developed what we call the Local Black Histories Project. That particular digital archive is a useful project for the local public school system to talk more about Black history, for families and their young people to engage around local Black history. That's a useful project, producing knowledge for the public good, right? And then how are you expanding? Okay, so what are you doing with the local community and how are you expanding beyond that? Because I'm not a stranger to Williamsburg, I came back to, my alma mater, but Virginia is home on many levels. I started developing relationships in Richmond, right? Which is about 45 minutes, an hour away. And well, I was working really closely with a theater company. We started doing film. Again, making work, making art that is useful for the public. So just think, how are you going to build on each level? And it's not about doing a bunch of different new things. Just how do you take the interest that you have and continue to expand it?
Sure, sure. So you had, even with all of this work, you are operating under a base salary. What you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about now is work outside of your institution.
Mm-hmm.
So what other financial opportunities, like grants, fellowships, or
Mm-hmm.
stipends for your creative work, did you earn? Did you apply for, that I should be aware of? Maybe not the exact ones you applied for, but what should I be aware of in terms of grants, fellowships, and stipends for my creative work, so that I too can go to these conferences and not pay $3,000-$4,000.
Yeah.
I can build something within the local high school and community and bus students in. What are some good places I should look?
So your Office of Faculty Affairs and Development, which is probably going to be in the provost's office. And then there's obviously the College of Art and Sciences at your institution. And then whatever professional development funds you can get through your department. And if you're jointly appointed, sometimes the joint appointment will have professional development funds that come along with that. It does require some entrepreneurialism on your part. You want to pay attention to if there's a daily digest of some kind or a newsletter that comes out from from at any level, the provost's office, the dean's office. Usually, if there are faculty grant funds available, be it for summer research, or for projects that you want to do throughout the year, they're going to be listed there. Or there might be a page on your dean's, the dean section of your website where they list faculty funding opportunities. If you're doing an international conference, then the Center for Internationalization, whatever that might be called at your institution, right, will usually have some funding available if you're going to go make a presentation, that is international. Again, if you are applying for an endowed professorship of any kind, they usually come with not just the stipend to honor you for the work that you've done, but also research funds. So that's helpful. If you assumed an administrative position, sometimes not only do you get the stipend, but then you also have, research funds available. Everything I was able to accomplish that required money to get it done was done through a fellowship, it's an institutional fellowship, um, an endowed chair, a faculty grants fund, our Center for International Studies, professional development funds that I had available through the department and/or program. The NEH Summer Fellowship Institute came with funding. Mm-hmm.
How do you recommend leveraging outside funding sources to increase your earning potential, while also still meeting the institutional expectations?
So with some of my outside work, we had to write grants. And so I was part of a team of grant writers.
Hmm.
And in the grant, you're writing in part of your stipend to do the
Okay.
work,
Okay.
right? Now, that's information that you will need to disclose.
Mm-hmm.
to your institution. And if you're writing the grant and you're using or doing it through the Office of Sponsored Research through your institution, then that's a whole different conversation. These grants were written, in my capacity as a member of that particular artistic team, and the funding came from the agency and went straight to that institution. That institution paid me.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay, so
Right.
yeah, I'm tracking that. Are there professional development opportunities that also open doors for salary advancement?
Mm, 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 mm. Uh, well, ask that question a different way, or maybe say,
So
more clearly.
within this profession, within your these grants that you were getting,
Mm-hmm.
they were clearly developing your profile as a
Yes.
scholar, right, in your creative
Mm-hmm.
work.
Mm-hmm.
Did this also help when you went back to your institution to create salary advancement towards your
Mm.
base salary?
Yes, those activities were factored into the equity adjustment discussion happened some years prior, right? And that's
Okay.
sort of an isolated
Okay.
event. We are evaluated annually.
Hmm.
And yes, I'm listing out. Here are all the activities in teaching and research, according to my departmental standards. This is the number of points, I earn,
Hmm.
right? And then at the dean's level, they compare, me to everybody else who received the number out of the unit to then determine, as I said earlier, how much of the pie you're going to get.
Right.
Right. But yes, these activities are how I make the case
For
for the
more money.
score that I should earn. Right. And again, I'm doing work that is meaningful to me. And so I take the time to lay out how much work is required, right, to produce 32 minutes of, short film,
Hmm.
how much time we have to spend on that, or, what it truly requires to teach a class twice, team teach a class twice,
Mm.
right, and build a digital archive that includes, oral testimonies that have to be collected, partnerships with different libraries. Yes, you should be keeping a record of your activities, and it's helpful if you do it monthly, right? As opposed to waiting until the end of the year when a report is due and you're trying to go back through to make a case. You're trying to go back through and find all the evidence. You're inevitably going to leave something out. And so if you take the opportunity to sit down, monthly, maybe even weekly, if you're that busy, to just jot down what you're doing, keep it in an Excel spreadsheet. It's probably the easiest way to do it, right?
Yeah, that's so true. We just completed our annual faculty advancement form as well, and it. I woke up in the middle of the night, like, oh, I didn't put that on there. I
Mm-hmm.
forgot about that because I haven't been keeping track of it in this way. And so, what's really edifying here is I should keep track of all of my work,
Mm-hmm.
really the way I keep track of my bills, my income,
Yes.
and my income and whatever is the bills that I pay monthly, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is how you have to keep track of, or at least for me, just through hearing that, I need to set up, like you said, an Excel sheet for what it is that you're doing, because at the end of this was just a semester. We do it every semester
Mm-hmm.
at UK, and I can't remember 4 or 5 months everything I've done sometimes. You know,
Oh, yeah. No,
and
you've met with students, you're writing recommendation letters, like,
all of that counts. I was, sometimes this is the tough part. If you're a good-hearted person and you're helping a student because you see potential in their future, Initially in that first year or two, 3, it's not clicking that, oh, I need to document this as part of my advancement, because it's coming from a place of endearment and hope and passion to see that student grow. But there's also a business component to this as well, which serves my family and myself, is that you have to document these things as they come to you, because that's part of your case.
Yes.
And I didn't learn that until kind of year 3, that how important that was
Yeah.
to document these things. So thank you for echoing that again. So once you receive tenure, Omiyẹmi, how does the conversation shift around salary advancement typically?
So you'll get an increase. Every institution is different. I wish I could say there was a standard, but it's not. You'll get an increase as part of earning tenure and promotion, because some places you get tenure, but you don't get the promotion, right? So it's a different conversation. I don't want to derail us, but it popped in my head, so I want to say it. There are some institutions where a candidate is viable for tenure, will get tenure, but it might not come with promotion, right? That has never been my
What is promotion? I'm sorry, I have to ask.
oh,
And I thought getting tenure was promotion.
not at every institution. So the promotion is the promotion to the title shift, right? So moving from assistant to associate, associate to full professor. That's
Okay.
the promotion piece. The
Okay.
tenure piece is we're going to retain you, right, in your position as
An assistant.
Mhm.
Well, that's ludicrous. That's just ludicrous. That doesn't. Okay, yes, don't derail me. Thank you. Don't derail
I don't
me.
want to derail or discourage, but you would know that, right? Like
Right, right.
you would know that already,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that that's how it works at that institution.
Yes.
Yeah, so many things we don't talk about when we're grad students.
Yes.
We don't either know to ask the question, or we're just not having those conversations that you could possibly end up tenured and not promoted, and how to negotiate your salary, and what are other things you can ask for if you don't get the salary counter offer that you desire, but that could be useful still,
Mhm.
and offset what you're not getting. So many things we're learning on the fly.
Yeah, and I would say just within the Black community in academia,
Mhm.
when we go into academia, especially as an assistant professor, if it's foreign to us, if we don't have an aunt, an uncle,
Yes.
a best friend who's been doing it, or a mentor, we're completely blind to this financial conversation. And what I'm
Mhm.
learning is that we're blind, but many of our colleagues around us, their eyes and ears are wide open on
Mhm.
how to advance, right?
Mhm.
Or the conversation is brought to them, think about these things. Because there is a component that I'm realizing, yes, the institution wants you to produce, but it's different when the upper level administration wants you to succeed. And when they want you to succeed, they talk about your production, but also your financial well-being, right? What
Yes.
this will do for you. And we don't necessarily have that conversation at our disposal all the time. And this is really important. In many ways, you're operating as a griot when you talk about African storytelling. You're
Mhm.
passing down the oral history to another African American who was entering into this field
Yes.
with knowledge, but not all the knowledge. Not the knowledge on 403B. These are the type of things we're talking about here, right? On
Right.
how to really preserve your financial well-being, because we work really hard. We work hard at our work, but we also work hard when we are the minority in the space to continue to fight for our voice in that space and not seem as if we are being hyper aggressive or oversensitive. None of that is in the guidelines or the contract, but it is as exhausting. That's a merit in
Yes.
itself.
So, to that point, you make me think of a story that I think is worth stating in this case.
Sure.
Um, so it's salary negotiation. This is a piece of information that I didn't know at the time. And I received some professional development funds as part of my package. And moving from one institution to another institution that was more resourced than the previous one, what I received, I thought was generous, right? In terms of the professional development funds.
Mm-hmm.
When I started developing the national profile, which means you pretty much got to spend money, right, to develop this profile, because it costs to attend conferences. So think every line on your CV of productivity is costing money. Right?
Wow.
I didn't think about it in that way until after the fact. And again, in the spirit of what you just shared, that was not the conversation that we were having, right? And so when, information always has a way of making its way to me. And so I became privy to another piece of information. Similar to the story I told you off camera, I said, wait. Now we're talking about two colleagues in the same space.
Wow.
Right? We do different work in the field, but we in the same space.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, this is very different. And the explanation I was given was that, they needed to purchase equipment to do the kind of work that they did. So they had to get what was about 5 times more than what I had gotten. And I said, but it costs on average, I don't know, $1,500 to $2,000 to attend a conference, right? Flight, hotel, food.
Yes.
So to present for 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes, I have to spend upwards of $2,000, and that's nationally. We're not going to talk about what my flight costs when I went to Liège, right? Just the flight. So, yes, I think if we go into these salary conversations with, some data, so I'm telling you now.
That's right. That's right.
Right? You know how much it costs you to attend, the last couple of ATHE conferences that you've attended. This is the data that we need to go into the conversation with when they come back with, and we can only offer you $3,000. So,
Are you talking base salary or in your research grant?
This will be supplementing your base salary with the professional development funds or the research funds.
Got it.
Right? So that you don't have to use
your own money.
Your own money. I mean, if we're going to fund, labs, right? No, it's not a lab. However, in our field, our production looks like attending conferences. And it costs. Every byline has a dollar figure attached to it.
That's right.
And so you might also, just for yourself, keep a running tab about how much it costs you to produce your research. That's partly how I think we can start figuring out our value.
That is Now that is a gem pulled out of the Atlantic.
You could thank the ancestors for that one. And I sure
Because
did think about that story.
that is, well, it's so true, right? When you go up, if you have that resume to support that, if I continue on this trajectory, I'm going to be over the Atlantic Ocean, across the Atlantic. You know, I may be in Europe, I may be in Africa. So if I'm going to continue to grow, boost the profile of the university and the department, we need to talk about creative research funding. 2,000, 5,000 isn't going to do it. No, that's gone in a year. One conference. So that is really good. And also, it shouldn't it should not have a negative impact on our base salary. It should be in addition to. Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you said that. Wherever you go, you take the name of your institution with you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So especially in the work that we might be doing around, Black theater, pedagogy and production, and performance. No one else is doing that work where we are, right, in our respective institutions. We elevate the institution through that work. Through that work, we create spaces of inclusion and belonging and a possibility, because students that may have never thought that they could operate fully and thrive in that space then begin to see the respective institutions as a place that they can call an intellectual and creative home through the work that you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and that nobody else is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go and make these international presentations and national presentations, you are taking your institution with you. That's work. That's presence.
Mm-hmm.
That's an institutional profile that you are developing and contributing to your, place of, intellectual maturation and whatever else you may be doing there, right? Because I think we also do mature intellectually as a result of the work that we're doing at our respective institutions, and we grow and we shift, and hopefully we make an impact on that institution as well through that work. A lot of this stuff is invisible, and we're not talking about the levels of invisible teaching, invisible service, and we have to start visibilizing that.
Well, you bring up this word invisible, and I have to ask this question.
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, how, on the scale of not concerned and very concerned, with the eradication of DEI, especially on our campus?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how it is on your campus, but the national conversation around eradicating DEI offices. What does that mean for our work as Black creatives? How concerned are you with the work you do, where you work,
Mm-hmm.
retaining job? How concerned should I be about, will tenure even be possible 4 or 5 years from now, in the research that I'm doing at creating Black work to speak to young Black audiences caught up in gang and drug violence, plays that speak to their experience? Where should I be on that scale?
I think every person has to answer that question. I think every person's going to have to answer that question for themselves. I think for me, if you're asking me, am I concerned because of the national conversation and state level conversations? I am not concerned. I'm not concerned. I'm aware. And I think we all should be aware. I think we should be aware, but we should not be concerned. Because when I hear concerned, I hear fear.
Well,
And that might not be what you meant,
No,
but
I don't mean
that's what I
fear.
think of.
No, I don't mean fear. What I mean is that our jobs could be obsolete. Like the work that we do can no longer be valued at our institution, and they begin cutting positions, not retaining people, and not bringing in. This research is no longer valued. So we have to shift to something else, right? To just teach theater. That's what I'm saying. How is our work and our research at stake of being eradicated, where we actually can earn a living by doing what we love to do?
So this conversation was a conversation that actually started back like when we were experiencing COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
The same kind of concerns that all of us in this discipline have now, I think we had them then. We do have to learn how to be responsive to the moment. You know, for me, when we were experiencing COVID, I was looking at the production, thinking, am I now going to be evaluated for promotion based on Zoom theater? Are we now going to start trying to codify a genre
Changing the
of
rules of
work,
the game.
right, based on Zoom theater?
Right.
Which was one of the reasons why I went up a year early
Okay.
for promotion to full, was because I said, I don't want to be part of this conversation. I don't want them to change the rules on me now that I'm near the finish line and say, you know, how well is the candidate able to, you know, to pivot in doing Zoom theater? Like, what are the metrics for evaluating the quality of that? Right. I said, if we're going to do that, then I should just move into film,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
what I did.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I pivoted into film. The company that I was working with, they got a grant, which enabled me to take, you know, some foundational classes. I was working in a team of people who were experienced in film production. So it was new to me, but not to them. So I was picking up things along the way. And at the end of the day, we're still telling stories, right?
Right.
I'm still working with students, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm still creating work that is useful and responsive to the needs of the community. So yeah, in all things, Jeremy, and all of those who may be, you know, following this conversation after the recording, yeah, you do have to learn how to be responsive to what you are getting in a moment. But do I think you abandon your mission and vision? You just learn how to move fluidly, right? So you teach your specialization, but then you also teach other things that are useful to your department and larger institution. Also, strategy in mind, think about the larger strategic aims of the institution. Like what are the conversations that they're having that end up in the strategic plan? And how does your work
Impact that
align
strategic.
with
Yeah. That's good.
the elements, the pillars of the strategic plan? That's part of how you think about pivoting,
Mm-hmm.
right? Go to obviously your department faculty meetings, but go to the faculty meetings of your college, right? Wherever you are situated, or your school. What are the conversations that they're having? What are donors funding?
Mm-hmm.
Read the announcement that comes from the advancement office that says, you know, X person gave $1 million towards this. You start to learn what the priorities are and where your work sits in relationship to those priorities. How can you be part of those conversations through your work?
That's really good. Yeah.
Right. So just like we did in COVID, now we got to be fluid. We got to be flexible.
Right.
Right. But
Mm-hmm.
also there's an element of this there's an element of this that I think is also spiritual. And I think that all of us, wherever we are whatever you believe, you were there at that particular place at that particular time for a reason. There is work to do that only you can do. And I think that work has to be accomplished as well. So we keep our eyes on the prize, right? And that's moving with ease through every level, doing the work that we are uniquely qualified and appointed to do, and ever aware of the national and international conversations, institutional priorities, and how we might be responsive appropriately to what those are.
Right.
But fearful or overly concerned, that's not generative.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's generative.
No, you're right. You're right. And, you know, to be clear, I'm not afraid, but I do like planning. You know, so if it's going to
Exactly.
rain and I need to look at the weather, I'm going to bring my umbrella to prepare for the rain, right?
That's right.
You know, so that was the genuine ethos of the question. What do I need to bring to the game to be prepared to where the paradigm may shift to? And you
So
outlined that.
exactly, if there's an inclusive excellence framework, read it.
Mm-hmm.
Strategic plan, read it. Look at what's being funded at your institution. What are donors getting behind? Where can you shore up new skills? So if there's a studio for teaching and learning of any kind, or center for teaching and learning innovation at any kind of at your institution, and there are new skills that you can acquire that are in alignment with what some of these new priorities are, do it.
Mm-hmm.
If there's some kind of professional development opportunity that's not on campus, but that's going to help you shore up your teaching and research, do it. Yes, we're being called to grow. Everybody.
That's good. Omiyẹmi, I believe we have had a great conversation. This was just it was great for me, and to glean this knowledge from you, but it was very free flowing. Now I felt the spirit there, the honesty and respect to the work, those who have come before us, and for you, those who are coming in your presence and after, the way you're pouring into me and all those who will watch this video who are in my position, but also I think people who are in your position, right? You provide a landscape and a picture of what it looks like to pour into good soil, right? This is what you're doing. So I know you speak about your ancestors. I know you speak about your mentors, what's gone on before you. I would say they're proud of you right now. They're really proud of you because I'm so fed from this conversation, not just emotionally charged, but with knowledge, right? And with strategy. So thank you, Omi.
You're welcome.
I dearly appreciate, and I look forward to working at serving on the board with you, and just being in your presence more. And so keep recruiting me, keep sending me the opportunities because I will run them down.
Will do. It's been a pleasure and an honor to talk with you, Jeremy. I know that you're going to do well.
Thank you.
You're going to do well, and you will continue to persist and succeed and thrive. And your students and your institution will be very pleased with the contributions that you make there and beyond. I want to
Mm.
thank those of you who are going to watch this on the replay. Thank you for your time, and look forward to more installations of transitions in leadership.